our new episode in trying to combat native speakerism with ELT professionals. Today, I'm going to speak to Joanna, and we're going to talk about what is more important in ELT, language studies at, say, university level, so getting a degree in language studies, or teacher training courses. Now, before we get to know Joanna a bit better, I wanted to emphasize the fact that normally, within a 5-year degree course at university level, you would have 300 credits. 300 credits, meaning that one credit is approximately 25 hours of study. This means that by the end of all your studies, you would have accumulated about 7,500 hours to your studies. If we're talking about a teacher course or teacher training course, the CELTA Cambridge is very popular amongst native and non-native English teachers, or aspiring to be teachers. And this is like an entry-level certificate for teachers that takes about 120 hours to complete with an additional 80 for written assignments. Now, don't get me wrong, I still think that it's a very tough course, but if you compare the two, I would say, they're not equal. Having said that, I began my career without owning any of these certification and qualifications. I did a CELTA, and later I got my master's degree in language studies.
But I had friends who didn't know how to teach. They finished no courses, and they started teaching because they learned English. If you learn English, you more or less observed what techniques your teachers were using. So at the beginning, you can teach people who are similar to you and use the same techniques that work for you and the group, people in your group. So I think like teaching at the beginning could be for lots of people, but later in life you discover that there are learners who are not like you. And what to do with them when the techniques didn't work. Let's say lots of people teach Kalan, and they say it's a magnificent technique, they love it. And during my studies, I learned that Kalan is not for everybody. For example, I cannot memorize sentences. So I couldn't teach Kalan to people who cannot memorize like me. But some people for a long time try to teach, let's say, alphabet and grammar before speaking, because that's how they learn in their system. And they don't understand that some people just don't want alphabet. They don't want grammar. They just want to start speaking as soon as possible. So Kalan would be great here, for example, for them, and not what we have in traditional courses like studies or, I don't know, CPE.
Yes, definitely. I feel like we are, as people, as humans, we think that other people can learn like us, and we're probably facilitators for the same type of learning or learner styles. However, yes, I totally agree with that, because I have a more inductive approach to learning languages, really. So I would speak it before I learn grammar rules and kind of open the grammar book even, I would say. So I have a more inductive approach, and I couldn't, I would just go to my students and say, okay, just immerse yourself in an English speaking contest and you're good to go. But obviously it doesn't work that way.
When you learn CELTA, I'm pretty sure you have language plus methodology teaching, but you don't know the culture that well, unless you explore it yourself, because to pass CPE, I'm pretty sure you have to explore the culture and the books.
Yes. And culture becomes really important if we're talking about, like, let me go back to, let's say, a school setting, right? So in Italy, if you were to, you have to go through a degree in order to be able to teach in a public school. But then you would have like an hour per week with the classes. And I had that because I went through the Italian school system as well. And there would be like a mother tongue teacher or a native speaker who would, model the correct pronunciation. Because with non-native English speaking teachers, it seems like the big elephant in the room is the pronunciation. And so it's very strange if you think about it, because having learned specifically, and you would think that in the 7,500 hours of studies, you would have acquired, the knowledge for, phonetics and how to teach them to your students, and have an acquired, sense of what is the correct pronunciation to begin with and how to teach it, that we should actually kind of lean or ask support to a teacher that comes from an English-speaking setting. Do you have that in Poland as well, with people coming, coming into the class and offering the correct model, let's say, of pronunciation alongside the actual teacher who is,
yeah.
full-time hired.
A preference in Poland is British English, like I think in lots of European places.
Yes.
And it was a small problem because, like, after British is not the preferred for teachers. Those teachers are interesting, of course, and I love those lessons. But I cannot watch so many British shows and try British English so many times in a day to like hold this accent. Like it's almost impossible to have it. I can pretend and read a few sentences, but it's hard to stay within. So what happens later if you learn only one accent? Let's say it's also only American versus British. You will know all the words you learn from TV shows with American accent and all the British words you learn from British shows and British accents. So if it's like book, because I studied literature, for example, I will think it's the proper pronunciation, but it's the only I remember from a book because I was listening to it a few times, and those other words I learned from TV shows will be an American accent. But also native speakers have the same problem. I've noticed that lots of natives like British cooking shows, so they speak about food in a British way, and other things could be an American way. So it happens a lot to native speakers as well. So I don't think
I love that you said that. I love that you said that because sometimes I switch as well, and it's probably because of what you're saying. You get you are exposed to so many varieties of the English, and so you kind of pick and choose. And sometimes I will channel more of a British English, sometimes an American English, and I joke about it quite a lot because I realize I do this, but I'm not sorry about it. I sort of say, I'm channeling my American today. But yeah, it's obviously not a very defined or specific one because I wouldn't be able to even mimic a specific accent that was clearly, local to one geographical position.
Yeah, and you mentioned like looking for a job. Later, you see in advertisements neutral accent and think like, oh, this is me. I have neutral accent. And what is neutral accent then? Because when you look closely, they say British or Australian or American, and you're like, oh, so this is neutral, but they have accents with accents. Like, what do you mean exactly? But I had this cousin that was really interesting case, and I think it's more important to speak, for example, slower for certain students, or repeat some words in different ways, more than having a certain accent. Especially that I teach mostly business, and I don't know how people travel with general English knowledge, but business people usually don't communicate with native speakers. They speak with other people with different accents. So it's more beneficial if I was this teacher from India with Indian accent, so they can, after my course, speak with other Indian English speakers, because I cannot help them that much as a Polish woman from Europe, because I understand the accent, but can I explain what exactly is happening that I understand? I just usually tell people like, okay, I watch maybe 5 Bollywood movies with lots of English, and I started understanding more. Then I spoke with them a lot. And then one day I just understood what they are saying. And it's just a matter of getting used to some things. You cannot stay with
I feel with that, in that case, you could just go to, teaching them strategies to retrieve information that they've lost, or how to ask for clarification, just go into the intelligibility mode. But what you were saying earlier, actually, about, this seeking for a neutral accent, I think if you ask any native teacher as well, they would say they have started, at least those who have undergone some teacher training, that they have in a way adapted their accents to sound more intelligible for their students. Because if we were all to speak at the speed that we do, at the same, with the accent, that whichever one it is, we try to neutralize it as much as possible, quote unquote. But we do that for the learners. Therefore, I feel that some of our students really go, oh, I understand everything that you're saying, but then you have to keep it authentic enough, because in the outside, in the real world, I feel like
when I mentioned just a few seconds ago, intercultural communication, when you have to stop somebody and say, can you repeat again and speak a bit slower? I really want to understand. So you learn those small things which are really important, but they are not practical they are theoretical very often. So even in workshops are full of teachers trying techniques on other teachers, we are still not learners of English. We are beyond this. We know English very well, so of course it's totally different. So
Yes.
I don't think I saw many workshops with practical part. And when I look at, for example, CELTA, how many hours is it? 6 hours of supervised teaching practice. So it's 6 hours enough after 1 month or 1 week of learning to practice something and learn and know what you exactly have. Because for me, studies were quite theoretical, but I could judge many techniques myself with quite a neutral approach. So, I see, it's this approach I remember from theories, but those training courses, I had to use them very quickly to check if they work. Like I couldn't judge them at all because I had no idea what they can add to my classes.
I think it's like, you're right. It's more of a hands-on approach. It's very intensive because normally you do it as an intensive course and it gives you the tools and methodology and approaches, but then I don't think the time is enough. You're kind of going through the motions of it, right? And then later, or if you had some teaching experience, which they already want you to have had, to kind of get with the flow of, okay, what am I actually doing in the classroom, and looking at it more. But if you think about it, even if you go to the Delta Cambridge website, and that is a whole year if you do it intensively to get a Delta Cambridge, but it does not qualify as a master's degree. They say it's more or less, I mean, you could consider it a master's degree in teaching, but it actually isn't, because otherwise it would be called a master's degree, right?
Yeah. I can judge from job advertisements. So in job advertisements, they are equal. So if you want to have a job, both are fine. And they are the same level because it's usually slash this, slash that, and you can have this or that. It's not
that's
really
great.
important.
In Italy, it's not like that. It's not like that. If you want to work in the, let's say, a public school setting, that will not get you in the door like that.
Yeah. But in my country, you cannot work with CELTA or Delta, I think, in public school. I don't think it's equal.
Okay,
you have to have CPE plus something plus some official paper from the government, which you can do only in certain institutions. And it should be, let's say, 2 semesters, 300 hours, something like this. I don't remember the exact hours, but you need pedagogical course, and it's usually 1 year. It's around 1,000 euros, I guess. So usually it's easier to get it during studies, to not have special classes in culture or history and choose this as your main goal during studies to finish with it.
Yeah.
But initially, it's not important what you finish in public school. You can very often finish English without teaching and still be a teacher. And I think they just don't have enough people to teach. That's why they will accept people with different degrees plus this extra course of 1 year. And I have 5 years of teaching finished. So I have initially more hours, and I had to have 2 months of observing and conducting lessons to start something like this. And of course, they always want some kind of experience. So I went to a different country and I worked there for 3 months to get this experience. And then I came back and no one ever told me no to my qualifications.
Were they looking for specifically that you had worked in an English speaking country by any chance?
Yeah, I didn't see this thing in my life, but maybe English speaking countries want this experience, and I never applied there because I see typical we want native speaker teacher English and they are preferred. So I'm like, okay, you're still trying to cover something and you're just, or for example, I saw one from Italy yesterday that we want a native English level speaker preferred who already lives in Italy and has experience here for many years, but worked in English speaking country for 2 years. So I don't think every place is equal, but and at this point when I moved out from my country to get this experience, because it was hard in my country to find any without any experience outside of studies and internships, another country was more polite to my degree. And I said that I want to try this approach. When I don't speak with students in their language, I will try to ignore their L1 because I just want to try it sometimes for 1 month. Then for 2nd month, I will learn their language a bit more and feel more comfortable and reveal slowly that I know some elements, because we had this technique during classes that you can reveal a bit later. That you actually understand more, especially with children, because that was my first target. And it was quite nice to practice finally everything that I learned, but I needed lots of things from private courses then. So during studies, I felt like I have so many techniques, it's enough. Then I left the studies and I felt like I need so much more. I need cutouts, I need some used things that people already did many times. I need to repeat someone else's lesson plans, because I want to be I don't know, a practitioner, not the person who uses her favorite things, but to
learn
experiment
by
a
doing
little.
and experimenting a little bit. Of course. I feel though when I don't believe, and I think you would agree with me, that when a native speaker is looking for a job, then degrees and teacher training qualifications don't matter as much, simply because because of this discriminatory advertising that there is with people looking for English speaking people to come and teach. I mean, I started off like that, I always say. So it's not a mystery, I sounded the part and I was hired by a school, but I had no previous teaching experience. I didn't have a 3-year degree. And so it was just like I was put in the deep end and said, okay, you're one of the teachers. So do you agree that they wouldn't need as much of a kind of a proof or a social proof or experience or experience even in any other setting?
As a teacher, you obviously spend time with other teachers and you meet native speakers sooner or later and you talk with them. So most of them that are in my country came here to have a different job sooner or later, but this job was easier to get than a job in international English speaking company that they want initially. But yeah, they have very often 1 week course with 1 hour to 6 hours of practical teaching. And that's enough to teach. And when I met the younger teachers, because older teachers sometimes learn from teachers' books, and they can have quite good lessons based on this, because those books are beautiful for beginners. So they learn about grammar, they learn about some things they should say, they see the target, they can talk to some, methodology caretaker, senior teacher who's there to help them. But I met also the young ones who told me, like, I teach children but without songs and rhymes because I think they don't like this. And I felt like, I see you had very little theoretical knowledge about children, because those people don't have children yet, for example. Okay, they're very young. They finished some degree or they have no degree. They can be just after high school or high school level, like diploma or something.
Yes.
And they come here because they want to see Europe, let's say. They choose a random country, they get the job, they have the same payment as a teacher who studied 5 years, has some experience, finished everything, is doing extra things. And with this help, they need lots of help, I guess. So I don't think it's more comfortable for the school. I think they need lots of attention, lots of training, and lots of extra things. And of course, they can always say that's what students want. They want lessons with native speakers. And I'm also biased because I see students who run away from native speakers more often. They said, like, I tried this one and I would prefer you because you can explain me some certain things. Native speakers were not answering some questions and they couldn't help me understand. But I also experienced the other part. So I was pushed to teach my native language a few times in my life. And although I asked, can you please find a normal teacher after 2 or 3 weeks, because it was just a school lacking people who can teach my L1. And I said, like, give them a normal teacher with a degree. And they told me, like, but can you just stay there and teach? It's very easy. I'm like, wow, like, it's not easy. They are asking me questions. I don't know how to answer them. You have to see yourself from like a different angle a little here, that of course you can get this job easier, but are you a teacher, or are you just a person who comes there for money, or a person who's trying something new on people who are paying for this?
I felt extremely like a fraud when I was asked to do that. And being the I really respect. My grandmother was an English teacher actually, but I didn't learn English through her, and I really respected the authority and the role of a teacher. So the idea that someone would call me their teacher and working as and knowing that I was not in fact a teacher was very hard for me. And even with my first lesson, I over prepared. I tried to look up. I was really trying to find a way not to expose the fact that I literally knew nothing. All I could do was stand there and speak.
Yeah.
And so it was really, really, daunting to me. And to think that people take it so lightheartedly, just go in a classroom and speak, and whatever questions you won't be able to answer, just say, that's how we say it. That it does not constitute a lesson. And the person, whether I started with company courses as well and business English, whether or not that's right for the company to be paying for this type of courses, not knowing, oblivious to the fact that this language school has literally taken backpackers as their teachers and is, basically improvising lessons with their clients, and they're paying thousands and thousands of euro to train their workers, their employees. I found it really, it sat really hard with me because I have a conscience, and I immediately sought formal training, and I thought, I cannot do this. I can't let this, let alone I was getting paid the same and no one asked me to.
Yeah. So also the payment is quite weird here, that I was paid the same as people who had no training and they just learn English in high school, for example, in certain schools, and they were also non-native speakers like me. So I guess that, like, the topic of our presentation, this or that, it's what do you want out of it? Do you want to be a good teacher and have lots of knowledge but never try even teaching? Or do you want to try from the beginning? Like, we encourage our learners that go out of the class, talk to the mirror, talk to your family. They don't know English. It's okay. Talk to them in English. Talk a lot. Walk around the house and use as much as possible.
Yourself.
Yeah, it would be better if we tried pieces of teaching much sooner